What if overthinking is actually a sign of intelligence? What if the very thing you're trying to fix is the reason you've survived everything so far? Let me ask you something that might sound strange. If overthinking is so bad, why does your brain keep doing it? Why would a system designed for survival choose something that makes you anxious, restless, exhausted, unless it doesn't see it as a problem? Maybe your brain doesn't think you're weak. Maybe it thinks you're in danger. Think about it. When you replay conversations in your head, when you analyze every possibility before making a decision, when you imagine worst-case scenarios at 2 a.m., what are you really doing? You're predicting, you're scanning, you're preparing, you're trying to avoid pain. And come on, doesn't that make sense? We live in a world of constant uncertainty, unclear signals, mixed messages, invisible expectations. Of course your brain wants clarity. Of course it runs simulations. Of course it asks, what if? But here's the uncomfortable question. What if overthinking isn't a flaw in your personality, but an outdated survival strategy running in a modern world? What if your mind is still operating like you're surrounded by predators, when the only threat is a delayed reply? Man, that changes things, doesn't it? Because if your brain believes thinking more equals staying safe, it will never stop on its own. Not because you lack discipline, not because you're dramatic, but because deep down, your nervous system believes vigilance equals survival. So before we try to silence the mind, maybe we should understand it, because the truth is, your brain doesn't love overthinking. It loves protecting you. And once you see that, everything starts to make sense. Imagine this. You're lying in bed. The room is dark. Your body is tired. But your mind, wide awake. You replay a conversation from earlier that day, that one sentence you said, the way their face changed for half a second. Did I sound rude? Did they misunderstand me? Should I send another message to clarify? You tell yourself to stop, but the thoughts don't listen. Instead, they multiply. Now you're imagining future scenarios, awkward tension, distance, rejection. And here's the strangest part. Nothing has actually happened, but your body reacts like something did. Your chest tightens, your stomach feels heavy, your breathing becomes shallow. Just imagine this for a second. If someone looked at you from the outside, you'd be perfectly still. But inside, it feels like a storm. Or maybe your overthinking doesn't show up at night. Maybe it hits when you have to make a decision. You sit down to choose something simple, a new job, a new opportunity, even what to say in a difficult conversation. At first, you're logical. You list pros and cons, but then your brain goes deeper. What if this ruins everything? What if I regret it forever? What if I miss a better option? And suddenly, you're stuck. Hours pass, energy drains. You feel productive because you're thinking so much, but you're not actually moving. You know what I mean? It feels like you're doing something important, like your brain is working overtime for your benefit. But instead of clarity, you get exhaustion. And here's the quiet truth most people won't admit. Overthinking feels safer than action. Because when you're thinking, you're still in control. You haven't risked anything yet. You haven't exposed yourself to failure. You haven't made the wrong choice. Thinking feels like protection. Action feels like vulnerability. Sometimes overthinking isn't about intelligence. It's about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of loss. And instead of facing that fear directly, your brain wraps it in analysis. It disguises anxiety as problem solving. That's why it's so convincing, because it sounds rational. It says, I'm just being careful. I'm just preparing. I'm just trying to get it right. But deep down, you're trying to avoid pain. And honestly, that makes sense. If you've ever been criticized harshly, if you've ever made a mistake that cost you something, if you've ever felt blindsided by someone's reaction, your brain remembers. It stores those moments like warnings. So now, before every decision, before every social interaction, before every risk, it whispers, let's think this through again, just to be safe. And the more uncertain life feels, the louder that whisper becomes. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable. The human brain hates not knowing, so it tries to solve uncertainty with repetition, replay it, analyze it, predict it, as if thinking long enough will finally unlock certainty. But here's the trap. Life doesn't offer total certainty, no matter how long you analyze. So your mind keeps running, like a search engine that never finds the final answer. And the exhausting part, you're not weak, you're not dramatic, you're trying to protect yourself in the only way your brain knows how. That's the internal struggle. You want peace, but your brain wants safety, and sometimes those two don't feel like the same thing. I've often wondered something. If overthinking makes us so anxious, so restless, so drained, why hasn't evolution deleted it? Why would the human brain keep a feature that clearly causes suffering? The answer is uncomfortable, but powerful. Because overthinking didn't evolve to make you happy. It evolved to keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, uncertainty was lethal. If you misjudged a shadow in the forest, if you trusted the wrong tribe, if you ignored subtle warning signs, you didn't get a second chance. So the brain developed a hyper-detailed prediction system. It scans for patterns. It replays mistakes. It simulates future outcomes. From a survival perspective, that's genius. From a modern lifestyle perspective, it's exhausting. Here's where the biology comes in. Inside your brain, there's a stress response system called the HPA axis. Now forget the complicated name for a second. Think of it like your internal emergency alarm. When your brain senses threat, the HPA axis activates. It releases stress hormones like cortisol. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tense. This system was built for physical danger, like there's a predator nearby. But here's the twist. Your brain reacts to social uncertainty the same way it reacts to physical danger. An unanswered message, potential rejection, a big decision, potential loss of resources, public embarrassment, social exclusion. And for our ancestors, social exclusion meant death. So when you replay a conversation 20 times, your brain isn't being dramatic. It's scanning for threats to belonging, because belonging used to equal survival. Now let's talk about something subtle. Your brain hates unfinished business. There's a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. It means incomplete tasks or unresolved situations stay active in your mind. Ever notice how you forget about something once it's resolved, but obsess over it while it's still open? That's not weakness. That's cognitive wiring. Your brain flags uncertainty as unfinished, and unfinished equals unsafe. So it replays over and over, as if thinking harder will produce closure. But here's the deeper layer. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. You don't need to memorize that. Just understand this. It's the system that activates when you're not focused on an external task. When you're showering, driving, trying to sleep, that's when your mind wanders. And what does it wander toward? Unresolved issues, social evaluation, future planning. This network is brilliant for creativity and self-reflection. But when stress levels are high, it becomes a rumination machine. You're not choosing to overthink. Your brain switches into self-analysis mode automatically. Now let's connect this to something even more important, neuroplasticity. This simply means your brain strengthens the pathways you use most. Imagine a trail in a forest. Walk it once, it's faint. Walk it daily, it becomes clear and automatic. Every time you respond to uncertainty with overanalysis, you strengthen that neural trail. Your brain learns uncertainty. Think harder. So next time uncertainty appears, the brain doesn't ask what to do. It already knows. Think and think and think. Man. When you see it this way, it's almost mechanical. But here's where it gets emotional. If you grew up in unpredictable environments, if mistakes were punished, if love felt conditional, your brain learned something powerful. Be careful. Don't get it wrong. Anticipate reactions. So overthinking became your shield. A way to reduce surprise, a way to reduce criticism, a way to reduce pain. Your nervous system adapted. And here's another piece most people miss. Your body and brain are in constant conversation. The vagus nerve, think of it as your calming highway, helps regulate safety signals. When you feel safe, your body relaxes. When you feel uncertain, that signal weakens, and the brain interprets that physical tension as confirmation of danger. So now your thoughts increase, which increases tension, which increases thoughts, a loop. It's not that you love overthinking. Your nervous system loves certainty, and thinking feels like an attempt to manufacture certainty, even when it fails. The tragedy? Modern life offers endless uncertainty. Career choices, digital communication, social comparison, endless options. Your brain was designed for clear threats and clear decisions. Instead, it faces ambiguity every day. So it defaults to its oldest strategy: analyze everything, prepare for everything, expect everything, because in ancient times, the one who anticipated survived, and that instinct, it's still alive in you. Not because you're broken, but because you're beautifully, intensely, evolutionarily human. The problem isn't that your brain thinks too much. The problem is that it's running ancient survival software in a world that no longer requires constant vigilance. And once you understand that, overthinking stops feeling like a personal failure and starts looking like a system doing exactly what it was designed to do. There's a moment most overthinkers eventually reach, a quiet, heavy realization. Why am I like this? You watch other people make decisions quickly. They speak without rehearsing. They move forward without dissecting every angle, and you think, something must be wrong with me. But here's the twist no one tells you. Nothing is wrong with you. In fact, something is very right. Overthinking is not a defect. It's an overdeveloped strength, and strengths, when unregulated, feel like weaknesses. Let me explain. The same brain that overanalyzes is usually the same brain that notices subtle emotional shifts in others, sees patterns before they're obvious, predicts consequences accurately, feels deeply, cares deeply. That's not dysfunction. That's high sensitivity to environment, and evolutionarily, that was gold. In ancient tribes, there were hunters, and there were watchers. The watchers noticed changes in wind patterns, animal behavior, shifts in social tension. They were cautious, alert, detail-oriented. They prevented danger before it arrived. That's you. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's scanning. But here's the problem. The modern world rarely rewards internal scanning. It rewards speed, confidence, decisiveness. So your thoughtful pauses look like hesitation. Your careful analysis looks like anxiety. Your depth looks like doubt. But it's depth, and depth is powerful. Now here's where things get interesting. Overthinking becomes painful not because you think deeply, but because your thinking is fueled by fear. There are two types of deep thinking. One is reflective, the other is defensive. Reflective thinking asks, what can I learn? Defensive thinking asks, what could go wrong? One expands you, the other contracts you. The same cognitive ability, different emotional fuel. When fear drives thinking, your nervous system stays activated. Remember the HPA axis we talked about? When that system stays on, your brain operates in protection mode. Protection mode narrows focus. It exaggerates risk. It prioritizes threat. So suddenly, a neutral comment feels like rejection. A small delay feels like abandonment. A minor mistake feels catastrophic. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to reduce unpredictability, because unpredictability once meant death. But here's the truth you need to hear. You are not in survival conditions anymore. Your mind is responding to modern stress with ancient intensity. And that's not your fault. It's adaptation lag. Think of it like outdated software. It worked perfectly in version 1.0 of humanity. But now, the environment has changed. And here's the most empowering part. Thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain can update. Not by force, not by shaming yourself, but by changing your relationship with uncertainty. Overthinkers often believe, if I just think long enough, I'll find certainty. But certainty is a myth. Life is probabilistic. You make decisions with incomplete information. Everyone does. The difference is, some people tolerate uncertainty better. And that tolerance can be trained. Here's the shift. Instead of trying to eliminate overthinking, ask, what is my brain trying to protect me from right now? Embarrassment, failure, rejection, loss? When you identify the fear underneath the thought loop, something changes. Because now you're not fighting the thought, You're understanding the protector, and when a protector feels understood, it softens. Let's take an example. You send a vulnerable message. They don't respond for hours. Your brain says, they're upset. You analyze tone, timing, last conversation. But beneath all that analysis, what's really there? Fear of rejection, fear of being unimportant, fear of being misunderstood. The overthinking isn't the problem, the fear is. And here's the wild part. The fear makes sense. Humans are wired for connection. Belonging regulates our nervous system. When belonging feels uncertain, the alarm activates. So instead of criticizing yourself for spiraling, you could say, of course I'm worried. Connection matters to me. That's not weakness. That's humanity. And here's the paradox. The more you try to eliminate overthinking completely, the more your brain resists, because it believes you're removing a safety mechanism. But when you acknowledge it, when you thank it, when you say, I see what you're trying to do, the intensity decreases. Overthinking transforms when it's redirected. Instead of, what if this goes wrong? You can shift to, if it does go wrong, I'll handle it. That's confidence, not in outcomes, but in yourself. Overthinkers often trust their analysis more than their resilience. But resilience is the real safety net. You don't need to predict every outcome. You need to trust your ability to respond. That's the evolution. From prediction to adaptability, from hyper-control to grounded confidence. Here's something most people never realize. Your overthinking probably helped you survive difficult chapters. It helped you read rooms, avoid danger, prepare for worst-case scenarios. It kept you safe when safety wasn't guaranteed. So instead of asking, how do I stop overthinking? Maybe the better question is, how do I teach my brain that I'm safe now? Because safety is the antidote. When your body feels safe, your mind quiets. When your nervous system trusts the present, your thoughts stop scanning the future so aggressively. You are not broken. You are hyper-capable. But your capability needs direction. Your depth needs grounding. Your analysis needs compassion. And when you stop seeing overthinking as an enemy and start seeing it as an outdated protector, something shifts. You move from self-criticism to self-understanding. And understanding is where change begins. Not force, not shame, not comparison. Understanding. You don't need to become less thoughtful. You need to become less afraid. And that's a completely different journey. One that doesn't silence your mind, but retrains it gently. Intentionally, patiently, because the brain that learned to survive can also learn to relax. And that, my friend, is not weakness. It's evolution. So now the real question becomes, what do you actually do with all of this? Because understanding why your brain overthinks is powerful, but relief comes from practice. Here's the truth. You cannot force your brain to stop overthinking. The harder you try to shut it down, the louder it gets. Why? Because your brain interprets suppression as danger. If you push thoughts away aggressively, your nervous system says, why are we fighting? Is something wrong? And then it increases vigilance. So instead of control, we practice redirection. Let's break this down into 3 powerful science-backed shifts. Simple, human, effective. Most overthinkers make one silent mistake. They believe their thoughts are facts. If the mind says, they're upset with me, it feels true. But thoughts are predictions, not reality. When you catch yourself spiraling, try this. Say internally, this is a thought, not a fact. It sounds small, almost too simple. But neurologically, this creates distance between your emotional brain and your rational brain. You move from being inside the storm to observing it. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And awareness is calm. At first, the thoughts will keep coming. That's okay. The goal isn't silence. The goal is separation. Here's something most people don't realize. Overthinking is rarely solved by better thinking. It's solved by regulating the nervous system. Remember the stress response? When your body feels unsafe, your brain searches for threats. So before analyzing the situation, calm the body. Try this. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Exhale slowly for 6 seconds. Do this for 2 minutes. Longer exhales activate the vagus nerve. your body's natural calming pathway. It signals, we're safe. And when the body feels safe, the mind reduces scanning. Man, it's wild how physical this is. We think overthinking is purely mental, but it's deeply physiological. You cannot reason with a nervous system that thinks it's under attack. Calm first. Think second. Overthinking is a search for certainty. If I think enough, I'll eliminate risk. But certainty doesn't exist. There will always be unknown variables. So instead of trying to guarantee outcomes, shift the focus from outcome control to self-trust. Ask yourself, if this goes wrong, do I trust myself to handle it? That question changes everything. Because resilience is more powerful than prediction. You don't need to foresee every scenario. You need confidence in your adaptability, and adaptability grows through action, not analysis. Start small. Make a decision without overanalyzing it. Send the message without rereading it 10 times. Choose the option that feels aligned, not perfect. Each time you act despite uncertainty, you teach your brain something new. Uncertainty is survivable. That's neuroplasticity in motion. You are literally rewiring your response to the unknown. And here's the part that matters most. You will still overthink sometimes. That doesn't mean you failed. It means your brain returned to its old pattern. Patterns change through repetition, not through shame. So when you catch yourself spiraling again, don't say, "Why am I like this?" Say, "Oh, my brain is trying to protect me." And then guide it gently, like you would calm a worried friend, because that's what your mind is, a protector that learned its job too well. Overthinking doesn't disappear overnight. It transforms. When fear decreases, thinking becomes insight. When the nervous system feels safe, analysis becomes clarity. Your depth doesn't need removal, it needs grounding. And here's something important. The goal is not to become someone who doesn't care. The goal is to care without collapsing into anxiety, to think without getting trapped, to prepare without predicting disaster. You don't need to be less intelligent, you need to feel more secure. And security is built through self-awareness, regulation, action, not perfection. Overthinking once kept you safe. Now it's time to teach your brain that safety can also come from trust. Trust in the present. Trust in your ability to respond. Trust in yourself. And when that trust grows, the mind slowly learns to rest. Not because it's forced, but because it finally feels safe enough to, night, when the lights are off and your mind begins its familiar routine, when it starts replaying what you said, what you should have said, what might happen tomorrow. Pause. Don't fight it. Don't judge it. Just notice it. And ask yourself gently, when did I first learn that thinking ahead keeps me safe? Was it a moment of embarrassment? A time you felt misunderstood? A mistake that cost you something important? Just sit with that memory, not to relive it, not to analyze it, just to understand it. Because somewhere in your past, your brain decided, from now on, we will be careful. And that decision probably helped you. It protected you. It reduced surprises. It kept you one step ahead. So maybe overthinking isn't your enemy. Maybe it's an old guardian who doesn't realize you're stronger now. You don't have to silence your mind completely. You don't have to become someone who doesn't care. You just have to teach your nervous system that the present moment is not a battlefield, that a delayed reply is not abandonment, that a mistake is not the end. That uncertainty is uncomfortable, but survivable. And here's something important. If you've spent years inside your own head, it means you're reflective, aware, deep. Those are not flaws. Those are qualities of someone who feels the world intensely. You know what I mean? Not everyone carries that kind of depth. So instead of asking, how do I stop being like this? Maybe ask, how do I guide this part of me with compassion? Because change doesn't happen through criticism. It happens through understanding. Tonight, when the thoughts begin again, instead of saying, why won't this stop? Try saying, I know you're trying to protect me. And then breathe. Slowly. Let your body feel the bed beneath you. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Small signals of safety. That's how retraining begins, not through force, through repetition, through gentleness, through awareness. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not weak. You are wired for survival in a world that no longer requires constant scanning. And the beautiful part, the same brain that learned to overthink can learn to rest. If this felt personal, if parts of this felt uncomfortably accurate, you're not alone here. There's an entire community of minds that feel deeply, analyze intensely, and are learning, slowly, to live more peacefully. Stay curious about your mind, stay compassionate with yourself, and remember, depth is not the problem. Fear is, and fear can be softened. I'll see you in the next one.